Okay, let me start with mantra. Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So last time we looked into the Shruti literature, what it constitutes. There were many names, and I hope it was okay. You can come back to that. I will give you the whole write-up with all the details and also content. We can expand, of course, Shruti till the whole course, yeah, but we don't do it. Um, we will just go ahead slowly and take Smriti literature, another part, which is again a huge piece of information, but I will give you just briefly, and then we will go into the content, which is much more interesting. So the overview of Shruti and Smriti. So Smriti literature has also an extensive, huge number of books, and there are few kind of categories. Vedangas is one of those, Veda Anga, so they were limbs of the Veda. There are 6 Vedangas, Shiksha, with Pratishakya literature, which is quite extensive, with many commentaries and so on. And there is Nirukta, with Nighantu and Nirukta, etymology of Yaska. There is Vyakarana Ashtadhyayi, 8 books of grammar. I am Vyakarana, basically. I studied Vyakarana in Pune University and was translating that treatise of Panini. And it has also extensive literature with many books, with Katyayanas, with Patanjali's Mahabhashya, many volumes. So there is a huge Vyakarana literature following this particular book. There is Chanda Sutras, poetics. There is Jyotisha, astrology, extensive literature with many books. And Kalpavedanga, which is the whole library, I would say. Kalpavedanga is the biggest. There are Shrauta, Grihya, Dharma, and Shulba sutras in different traditions, in different shakhas. It's an immense literature. Yeah? If I would take all the Kalpavedanga books into one room, it would be full of books. We spoke about them briefly, but yeah, you can notice that Shiksha, Nirukta, Vyakaran, and Chandas are dealing with the language itself. Shiksha is phonetics, how to pronounce mantras. Nirukta is etymology, the origins of the roots. Vyakarana is the structure, that means the morphology and syntax. And Chandas is the poetics, different meters. Only 2 of these Vedangas, Jyotisha and Kalpa Vedanga, are different. Jyotisha is connected to the rituals, basically, to the calendar, and calendar is connected to the rituals, to the everyday oblations of Agnihotrin. And because Agnihotrin, the Grihastha, who the household, they had to make oblations into the fire daily. And Jyotisha was very important to follow the order of things. Yeah? Later, Jyotisha became more personalized, more connected with the personal kind of individual destiny and predictions, but before it was more connected to the ritual, how to follow the right order of things. And Kalpa Vedanga, which is describing how to build the Vedis, the altars, how to make oblations, what mantras to use in different rituals, and so on. I will give you the write-up where all these elements are spelled out for you, so you could see exactly what they are doing, what kind of rituals, and so on and so forth. There are also Upavedas, Ayurveda, Gandharva Veda, Dhanur Veda, and Sthapatya Veda. These are Upavedas. Upa means small, kind of smaller Vedas. Now the Samhitas. Ayurveda is a huge literature also, It has several Samhitas, Charaka and Shruta Samhita, and some of you may studied Ayurveda. And there is Kashyapa Samhita, which is lost and was original. And many, many commentaries. So, and the rest also. Gandharva Veda is of later origin, and music is derived from Samaveda, notifications, notes, or tones. And Dhanurveda, military science, how to organize the war and the armies and so on. And Sthapatya Veda is architecture, which is closely connected to the Shulba Shastras or Shulba Kalpa Vedanga. Shulba Sutras, it's how to build the Vedi. From there they started to build the architecture of the buildings, the temples. Yeah. Now, to finish this portion with Shruti and Smriti literature and to come to another section of the epic literature, I have to mention something interesting here. That all these hymns and all the Vedangas and all this literature of Shruti and Smriti, Samhitas, Brahmanas, Aranyakas, Upanishads, and all the Vedangas were transmitted orally. Hymns were recited in many different ways, and these ways are known as mantra patha, when you read the hymn as it is, and then pada patha, read word by word, and then there is krama patha. Krama patha, you read combining words in a different manner. There are 8 different types, and in my this appendix, you will find all of them, all these types described, how they were manipulating with words in order to learn them perfectly by heart. And I was mentioning in the previous session that when the scholars, Western scholars came to India, they discovered that the texts recorded, well, they recorded in the north, south, central India, and from all corners of India were nearly identical, and it was a big surprise. That means that the oral tradition is quite reliable, yes, in preservation of the text. Much more reliable than anybody could think of. And that is because of this Kramapatra ways of reading. Sometimes maybe you heard these Kramapathins reading the text in this interesting manner, repeating the words and casting them back and forth. Yeah. So that style, those styles were in the head, so they took the hymn and were rearranging the words in a different ways of reading, which kind of strengthened the memory of the hymn. So hymn could not be forgotten afterwards. So Vedic accent, a few words about the Vedic accent, Anudatta, Udatta, and Svarita. Anudatta is the low pitch, Udatta is the high pitch, and Svarita is the composed pitch. So according to Panini, Nichaih Anudatta, the Anudatta is the lowest, Uchaih Udatta, Udatta is the highest, and Samahara Svarita. And Svarita is composed of 1/3 Udatta and 2/3 Anudatta. It's a falling page. So basically, if I show on the fingers, it would be like 1 tone and half tone nowadays, like Agagnimile, yes, like Do, Re, Re, Mi bemol, Re, yes? Like Do, Re, Mi bemol. So these are the pitches in the tradition nowadays. Most probably it wasn't so from before. Most probably these were much higher pitch and much lower pitch, not only 1 tone and half tone, but maybe 5 tones was the difference between the Anudatta and Udatta, low pitch and high pitch. So high pitch is a morphological accent in the word. Yeah? I can also give you the link where I explain this in detail, what it is for, how it was used, and why these pitches are so important. Because the text can be preserved in the most authentic way. That means we preserve not only the meter and the words, but also the accent in the word. Can you imagine? With proper accent in the word, the text was preserved, which is unthinkable, huh? Because the accentuation may always shift and change. Especially within 200 years, the accent in language is changing dramatically. And here for thousands of years, the same accentuation. So it was a recorded accent. So if I will give you an example, maybe I will give you an example. If you are interested, are you interested in these?
Yeah.
Let me open something for you from the text. From the Rig Veda and show you how it works. I will open something which everybody knows, and then we'll explain that. I know it's a bit not the same. I'm dealing with the literature today. I look at Rashi's face and I know that she's interested more in psychological things and not this kind of boring stuff. But still I hope it will be useful on the longer run. So if you look at some of you may know how the accent works and what it is for. Do you know? Somebody can explain, no? Yeah, but you heard this Agnimihile Purohitam, this kind of Agnimihile Purohitam, and you can see that there are markings here. So Anudatta is marked as a line below, Svarita, which is Samahara Svaritam, is marked as this. And in between we have Udatta. So Agnim Hele Puro Hetam. Yeah, you see it. Yeah, Yajnasya Devam Ritvijam. Yeah, this line is Svarita, this line is Anudatta. It's easy to read, like notation. Yeah, you can read any Vedic text now, knowing how to read it. So in between there is Udatta. Between Anudatta and Svarita, there is Udatta. So Anudatta and Svarita are here to point that Udatta is in between. So Anudatta points that Udatta is next. Svarita points that Udatta is previous. That's it. Nothing else. They are here only for one reason, to point where Udatta is. They have no other reason to be. It's funny, huh? But why udatta is so important? Because it is that proper morphological accent in the word. If I shift my accent in my speaking in English now, you would not understand a word what I'm saying. Because you select the words from the flow of speech by the accentuation, it seems. You hear them because I accentuate a particular syllable in the flow of speech. Yeah? Particular, I say, and not particular. And if it would be, if I start shifting the accent, you would hear, what are you talking? There would be unrecognized speech. There is an anecdote. My sister is married to a French guy who is Jacques, and he meets with people. He is a guide in India, and he speaks to them English. And they say, after he says to them a few phrases, they ask him, English, please, English. This is English. This is English. That was his English. And even English is not recognized because of accent. Accent is shifted. You can't hear the words in the flow. So that was so crucial to preserve the proper accent. And why we know that it is authentic, because if I take word agnim, and the accent is on the second syllable, agnich, then it is throughout the text agnich only. There is no other accent ever in Rig Veda. That means they are preserving it properly. So it's not some kind of alternation, some kind of, preference of usage or something. It's not the case with Taittiriya. Taittiriya is already mixing things. But Rigveda Samhita, yes, it is totally authentic. So it would be Agnim. Agnim is the accent. Ile. Ile is the verb, unaccented verb. You see, there is no udatta here because Svarita pointed to the udatta before. Ile has no udatta because next is anudatta, not Svarita. So there is no next to point that there was previous udatta. So ile is unaccented word. All the verbs are unaccented if they are not at the beginning of the sentence. So Agnim ile, I'm reconstructing how they read in the Vedic times, how rishis spoke this poetry. Purohitam, Rohi is the udatta, as you see, because pu is anudatta, he is svarita, pointing to in between udatta, high pitch. Purohitam, yajnasya, devam ritvijam, I'm exaggerating, hotaram ratnadhatamam. This was the proper accent in the Vedic times.
So, in the context of the cultural evolution, then it means that if we had to preserve anything on the oratory level, the only way we actually could do is by very being very very specific about accent. That was the way, right? Is that in the larger context of that because we are studying the culture and how it moved? So this is the key element, right?
This is the key element for the text.
Yeah.
Why this text was considered to be the divine text, the revelation of the highest rishis received. So it had to be preserved by thousands of generations of Brahmins, by millions of people. This text was preserved over the period of thousands of years. Yeah? By learning by heart. From 6 years old, when you are initiated into Brahmacharya ashrama, till you are 30, you are repeating this text. You are learning it by heart, automatically by heart. Yeah? And then you transmit it to your either your student or your son. It was also transmission to your children and to your son. and he transmits to his son, and so on. It was oral tradition, which was, and why it was important to preserve Udatta is a big question, because nowadays nobody reads this way as I read. Agnimile purohitam yajnasya devam ritvijam hotaram ratnadhatamam. Who would read like this? Nobody. But what is interesting, that when the text is taken into ritualistic formation, when they have to apply it in the rituals, they would not read Agnimihile Purohitam Yajnasya Devam Ritvijam. Nobody reads this way. Why? It's a question, huh? They would read Eka Shruti. Agnimire purohitam yajnasya devam ritvijam hotaram ratnadhatamam. Why they would read Eka Shruti? Eka Shruti, no accentuation, no movement anywhere. Because, and there is a reason, because this Vedic accent was only for one reason, to preserve the Udatta. It was not meant to be read. It's not the reading style. We do not know this. In India nowadays, nobody knows this. Even Brahmins in the temples, when they do the oblations and the rituals, they would read Agnimihile Purohitam Yajnasya Devam Ritvijam. They would read the way how the text had to be preserving Udatta. That's it. Nobody thinks even that it was meant only for one reason, to preserve the accent. And once it is preserved, it had to be read properly. Uchay Udatta. Udatta has to be accentuated. Where is Udatta if it is all in the middle? There is no accentuation of Udatta. It's only pointing where Udatta is. So I have to read it. Agnimile purohitam yajnasya devam ritvijam hotaram ratnadhatamam. Agnif purvebhih rishibhih idio nutanai rota sadevan eha vakshati. Now I'm reading with Udatta everywhere. This is the reading of the hymn. It's an invocation. It's a totally different articulation. By the way, when I met in Pondicherry with a group from Gurukula, the whole Gurukula group with Guru and all the Shishyas came to Pondicherry to meet people in Sakar. Ananda Reddy called me. We have one Sanskrit scholar. He will come to talk to you. He spoke only in Sanskrit, that Guru. And I explained to him this a reconstruction of the Vedic accent, Udatta. He was in tears. He said, this is the meaning. I can hear the meaning. Because you can't hear the meaning if you read in this preservation fashion. You have to translate it in the mind. But if you read it in this diction, it's like you are invoking really the deity. It's a breath and articulation. It's a proper articulation. So why did they need this accent? And now I will say why they needed it. Because there is a clash between the morphological accent in the word and the meter. The meter is iambic meter here. Gayatri is 888, like ta 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 ta. Iambic, yeah, ta 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 8, ta 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 8. Pause. Ta 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 ta. This is it. Now this ta ta interferes with the accent in the word. Iambic meter interferes and demands, like Agni mile purohitam yajasya devam ritvijam hotaram ratnadhatamam. It demands this accentuation. Meter demands. But the words may not fit there. So how would you preserve the word with its own accent and the meter at the same time? It's very difficult, yeah? So this is how they did it. Because if they would remember Agni mile purohitam This one fits for this pada. But then yajñasya fits also. And here devam has to be. But it is devam, doesn't fit into iambic meter. Just opposite. The accent in devam does not fit into the meter. This is the general problem of poetics, yes, in every language, yeah? That the meter not necessarily fits with the words, and that creates a beautiful, unique poetry. The difference between the meter and the accentuation in the word, yeah? It creates the uniqueness of poetic expression. Yeah, that two components coming, overlapping, as it were.
Vladimir, I would like to tell you that in what you were saying about the accent, in some of our theatrical productions, especially in Sanskrit theater, and even some of the very authentic tele serials of older times, where this Upanishads and all, the chanting over there is exactly how you were saying, which you are saying is very rare, and no rishis and no pandits and nobody does it. But it's very interesting that in our performing arts we still have that, because for the accent and the sound has to be so correct, otherwise it's just wrong. Like you're saying, if it doesn't invoke, then it is pointless. So maybe little bit of it still is doing okay. Some people are still at it a little bit. Just had to share.
Yeah, in theater you have to be really yes, self-expressive or true in the speech, otherwise you cannot just perform something which seemingly resembles something. It has to have an effect, it has to have an articulation. I can read to you some of the, if you want, how it reconstructed with the I can take some maybe just for you to hear the language, which is very different. We were doing hymns to Mitra and Varuna. Let me open Kashyapa. Let me open some. Today or yesterday I was reading these hymns in the authentic way, reconstructing the accent. I want you to hear how it sounds. For example, here, 62. It's Trishtup. Trishtup is different. If Anushtup is 8888, like Shloka, yes? Which is also very interesting, like breathing in, breathing out, 4 in, 4 out, 4 in, 4 out. It has a particular, meter has a particular power. But Trishtup is divided, it has a cadenza, it has a pause in between. Ritena artam, pause. Apihitam, pause. Dhruvam vam. Suryasya yatra vimuchanti ashvan. Dasha shata sahatasthu tad ekam divanam shreshtham vapusham apashyam. This is Trishtup, it's bigger, 11 syllables. Yeah, it has opening, iambic opening and archaic closing. I wanted to read some smaller hymn with Anushtup. Just for you to hear the accent and most probably some kind of deconstructed way of how Vedic rishis most probably read these hymns. Varunam vo, it's a hymn to Mitra and Varuna, to the divine being and consciousness. Varunam vo rishadasam richa mitram havamahe parivrateva bahvo Jaganvansa Suvarnaram Ta Bahava Suchetuna Prayantam Asma Archate Shevam Hi Jariyam Vam Vishvasu Kshasu Joguve. It sounds like not Sanskrit even. When you read this, it sounds like poetry finally. Yannuna Mashiam Gatim Mitrasya Yayam Patha Asya Priyasya Sharmani Ahim Sanasya Saschire Yuvabhyam Mitra Varuna Upamam Dheyam Richa Yadhakshaye Maghonam Stotrinam Chaspurdhase Ano Mitra Suditibhih Varunascha Sadhastha Suekshaye Maghonam Sakhinam Cha Vridhase Yuvam no Yeshu Varuna Kshatram Brihacha Bibhrithach Uruno Vajasataye Kritam Raye Suastaye Uchantyam me Yajata Devakshatre Rushadgavi Sutam Somam Nahastibhih Apadbhih Dhavatam Nara Bibhrato Archananasam. I had to read the whole hymn that you would hear at the end, the additional one line, which creates the whole perception. You could feel artistically how beautiful the diction is, how full of articulation, sounds, rich and powerful. There is a power in it. It's not just some kind of poetry.
What if you had to read it in the meter, like you were talking about the iambic meter? How would you do? Maybe could you read just 2 lines in that way?
Tata 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 tata. Varunam vorishadasam richa mitram havamahe. Sometimes they read like this. You can hear this in India often. Yeah? Parivrajeva bahvo jaganvansa suvarnaram tav bahava suchetona prayantam asma archate shivam hi jaryam va vishvasuksha sujoguve.
That's the only way they all read, actually. Right.
They follow the meter. They forget about the accent in the word. But if you bring the accent and the meter, you will have a unique representation of the poetry that would stand out very differently. Okay, that was about the meter. I have to come back to my... Do you see the presentation? Yeah? No, you most probably not. Okay. So this was why they had these Uddattas and Ekashruti I was already mentioning. Okay, I'm going ahead, forward. So I'm leaving behind Shruti literature and go into the epic literature now to overview the foundations of... there are 2 epic stories, great stories, Mahabharata, which has 18 books, more than 120,000 verses, more than 120,000 verses. And the most famous parts of it, of course, is Bhagavad Gita, yes, and story of Savitri and Satyavan, and also Harivamsha Purana, which is added to it, to Mahabharata, which has 16,000 verses. We can consider it to be 19th book, but yeah, it's additional book, which is huge, actually. I have the whole Mahabharata at home in India. I'm now in US. So there's... it's like the whole shelf, 18 books, volumes. It's a huge number of books. And Ramayana has 7 books. It's much smaller, and it's 40,000 verses. Also, Ramayana is, as you know, composed by Valmiki, and Mahabharata by Vyasa. These are great rishis. Sri Aurobindo considers to be Vyasa, Valmiki, to be the greatest poet of all times. He has the whole hierarchy of poets. The first is Valmiki, the second is Vyasa, according to Sri Aurobindo. And the next is, interestingly, Homer and Shakespeare. These are the 4 greatest poets of all time, according to Sri Aurobindo. Quite interesting. Homer and Shakespeare is in the first rank of the highest, greatest poets. And then the rest. The second is everybody else, Kalidasa, and Goethe, and so on. There are many poets following them. But the first unbeatable and the first number one is Valmiki. And that's quite interesting because when you read the Ramayana, you could feel the most beautiful diction ever, the softest, it is pervading you deeply into the heart. You feel it. When I'm in a bad state, I have to read one page of Ramayana and I'm totally cured. It's like if you have a bad consciousness, something wrong, the anxiety, fear, just read one page of Ramayana. Just read the language, the diction, and everything is done. Many times when I wanted to read, but I had some kind of psychological problem to solve, some desire to realize, I couldn't read Ramayana because it was erasing that kind of state which I wanted to keep, So I said, oh no, I can't read. I want to solve that problem first. It was still dear to me, I didn't want to get rid of it so easily. So it has an amazing effect, this. Mahabharata is much more complex. It is much more sophisticated. There is even a myth that Vyasa was making it specially sophisticated because he was dictating it to Ganesha, as you know, and Ganesha was scribe of Mahabharata. He was writing, but he said, I will write everything down if you compose non-stop. So he had to compose such a sophisticated verses that Ganesha could not understand what it means, and he was thinking for a while, and in the meanwhile Vyasa could rest. It's funny. It's kind of Indian humor,
But do you know that none of us are supposed to be keeping Mahabharata in our house? In Indian household, we only put Ramayana and Gita. They say if you have Mahabharata in your house, then you will have Mahabharata, as in the conflict and the war and the family disharmony. So nobody keeps it. You go to any Hindu house, Indian house, you will never have. And we all have Ramayana and Gita. It's the take. Like now, when today you were saying, I'm thinking, oh my God, we've been generations after generations, we've been brought up thinking like that. None of us have seen a Mahabharata. We have only heard it or seen on the television. Ever.
I thought why my life was such a turmoil, such a mess. Now I know.
You have a whole shelf, all 18 books, Vladimir.
And not only I was reading them regularly with my friend. We were meeting every day and reading through the Mahabharata. Yeah. Now I understand. It's interesting. Yeah. And of course, there are more stories like Nala and Damayanti, beautiful myths. All the mythology is coming from Mahabharata, all the creation hymns. All the story of Rama is in Mahabharata also. It's a very powerful book, actually. I think Vyasa did something to the whole nation, and he put the bomb inside because Draupadi has 5 husbands. Most probably that's why nobody wants to keep it in India, because how can you have 5 husbands? It's something unheard of. Usually Sita and Rama, yes, something. There can be discussions, but and fight, but 5 husbands. Yes, so the stories. They are really profound and beautiful, and Gita and the whole Bhishma story, how it starts, you remember that, yeah? The Vasus stole the cow of desires, and they were cursed, and they were born to Ganga, and then Bhishma stayed, and he became the king, and the whole story. Truly speaking, the whole Mahabharata can be viewed as a story of Bhishma, truly speaking, rather than the story of Pandavas. Pandavas were kind of addition to it. It was Bhishma's story, or even maybe Karna's story, if we can take it even one step further, because Karna was the first son of Kunti and was born immortal in a way. Anyhow, this is another for another time. If we want to concentrate on Mahabharata book by book, it's an amazing journey. Now I'm coming to another section of darshanas. There are 6 darshanas. Darshanas are actually philosophical systems. They all emerged from Brahmanas, from Aranyakas and Upanishads, basically, from the mythology and metaphysical treatises, Upanishadic treatises. So we have 6 major, even more here, because I split Nyaya and Vaisheshika. So we have Mimamsa, Purva and Uttara Mimamsa, belonging to different sections. Purva mostly to the Vedic rituals, Uttara mostly to the philosophical treatises of Upanishads, yes, on which the whole Advaita Vedanta was built, on Uttara Mimamsa. And we have Nyaya of Gautama Rishi, approximately, most probably from 600 BC. These are all very approximate dates, yes, dated by Western scholars. Vaisheshika of Canada, and also approximately 600 BC. Sankhya Karikas of Ishvara Krishna is for 2nd AD, but Proto-Sankhya, so to say, all the Sankhya is already found in Mahabharata, in the Gita, in the Upanishads, yes, and that is approximately 800 BC. Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, approximately 2nd century BC. And they also dispute, maybe that is the same Patanjali, which is the author of Mahabhashya, of the commentaries on the Panini's Ashtadhyayi text. There is also Vedanta. Vedanta is a very broad term, yeah? And in this case, if we include Upanishads, Gita, they are all, Brahma Sutras are included into Vedantic literature. Veda Anta, the end of the Veda, or the top, the cream, the quintessence of the Veda. And of course, it is not so. We will look into Vedanta. Vedanta has extensive literature later, especially Vishishta, Advaita, Dvaita Vedanta. All these forms of Vedanta later were developed into the philosophical systems. Yeah? And we have one more, Charvakas. And Charvakas are quite interesting system. It is the system of Vedic materialism, let us say. Charvaka, I was thinking where this name is coming from, and that was the Charvaka, the name of the Rishi. Sometimes they consider this to be the name of the Rishi. Sometimes they think it is Brihaspati, who was the author of Charvaka system. And it is the system of materialism, but in a very interesting manner. Spiritual materialism in a way. Looking at matter as the final product of the spirit. That's why should we look for the spirit elsewhere if it is already here manifested? So it's very different from materialism known to us in another form. And we find the traces of it already in Brihadaranyaka, where the Yajnavalkya Rishi, he speaks to his two wives. He had two wives, Maitreyi and Katyayani. And Maitreyi asked him about the knowledge, and Katyayani received the wealth. She wanted to, so both of them inherited different wealth. One inherited the physical wealth, the whatever properties Yajnavalkya had, and the other asked for the spiritual wealth. So it's quite interesting. Two wives inherited different wealth before he left for Vanaprastha ashrama. So this is basically it. There are more things to say, but I will stop here. We have maybe 10 minutes or 15 minutes for questions and answers, clarifications, and so on. I will not go into Vedantas and will not go into Tantras today, because it's a big topic. It's already quite a lot. I'm kind of mapping out something we will be dealing more in details later, in more in context. I'm kind of laying the context for the future studies. Darshanas, an interesting word. Yeah, yes, John.
Actually, it's a question from last lecture.
Mm-hmm.
If you'd be willing to
Sure,
address
definitely.
it.
Yeah.
I really didn't understand the distinction when you were talking about the double process of evolution, the Pitrayana and the Devayana. They seemed like kind of on a continuum, the same thing.
Yeah, well, was there a slide of it or something? I was just mentioning in a minute, there was no slide for that, yeah?
I don't think there was a slide for that.
No. Okay. So Pitrayana and Devayana, there are, the whole calendar is built on this. Yeah, I was mentioning Agnihotra, yes? Agnihotra
Yes,
ritual. And there are three fires. And there is Garhapatya fire in the middle towards the east. There is Dakshina to the south and Ahavaniya to the north. And there are three oblations are done simultaneously by three priests from three different samhitas, from Rig Veda, Yajurveda, and Samaveda. Yes, they are making oblations. There is Hotar, Adhvaryu, and Udgatar, three different priests doing three different oblations, simultaneously reciting three different texts from these three different samhitas. So one is dedicated to the embodied state, other is to Pitris, other is to the gods. So the Devayana path is considered to be path of the soul development. Yeah, when the soul reaches the sun, so it enters into the sun, its origin. We all came from the sun and we enter back, we go back to the sun. So from that passage, entry, there is no return, it is said in Chandogya. So when the soul enters into the sun, it goes to the beyond, to the transcendental world. Moon is the Pitrayana, where the means of our knowledge, or the instruments of knowledge, are developed, our body, mind, and vital. So they are built up through this reincarnation, constant reincarnation. So when we are born, when we die, we go to the moon and we bring all our experiences to the moon, which we acquired in this life. We are full of impressions, as it were. And these impressions are very dear or tasty food for the gods. Because when we interacted in this life with our soul, Yajamana is our soul, so we created that particular elixir or sap of immortality within this manifestation, which we call soma. And that soma they partake. We feed the gods, the devatas, which invested into our bodies when we were born in material, physical, and mental sense. We feed them back. We give back all what we earned, so to say. We pay back with percentage to the bank. So they receive, yes, somebody wants to ask the question. Prem, yeah, Prem Kumar.
Sorry, it's about administrative problem. Unfortunately, I couldn't attend yesterday, Sanskrit one, and the last Sunday, unable to attend. So will you be kindly sending the recorded versions, please?
Sure, they are all put on into the folder, and you can from there you can come there. I will send you the link to the Google Drive, and you can find it there. Definitely.
Oh, thank you very much for it.
Sure.
You.
So I thought it is more related to this issue of feeding the gods back. So it's quite interesting that these devatas, which are in the nakshatras, in the bigger cosmos, they are investing into our own being here, but they want payment back. They want our impressions. So when we die, as it were, we contribute whatever we took from the mental plane and modified and enriched, we give back to the mental plane. Thoughts, impressions, ideas, systems, thinking, all our thinkings and impressions are enriched and given back to that world where it was taken from. So it becomes richer and richer every time. The same with vital world. All our impressions, we modify, we refine, we make it more sophisticated, more beautiful. And all those beauties with our interaction of the soul become the precious treasures for the gods, because they invested into us before. Now they get it back, that percentage. So we feed them back with our impressions. That is a very important for them to get it back. And from that food, they change and grow and evolve. We make them evolve through our own experiences. Otherwise, they are not evolutionary beings. They are typal beings. They don't evolve by themselves. They are what they are. But through us, they may change and become stronger and become more wise and more powerful. I do not know whether it makes totally sense, but it is really something amazing if you think of, because our purpose is to change the cosmos. Cosmos has to become more and more aware of the divinity. And since we are that spark of the divinity, we are causing it, we are making it possible for the cosmos to see, to achieve. It is only through us that the devatas can evolve and develop. Only through us they can reach, as the Veda says, to the throne from which they would see the highest, the Aditi and Diti, the supreme consciousness and the lower consciousness simultaneously. This is the view of the supreme. And to achieve that, they need us to participate through our sacrifice, and that was the sacrifice. So we invite all these devatas to invest into us, and then through that investment we develop the interaction with our spark divinity within, and that creates the whole sacrificial field of change of the world. That's how the world evolves and changes.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, these are the two, Devayana and Pitrayana, and they are simultaneous. That double process of evolution. We are evolving as instruments, as human beings, through the genetic code, passing forward to our children, to our children, to our children. So we are securing in time our own birth in the future, as it were. So our grandchildren becomes our parents finally, and pass all that what we did in the whole this lineage to us again, that we can develop it again, push it forward again. And that is Pitriyana. Pitris are very interested because they are our children and our parents in the past and the future. And they are interested in that development. They are holding on to that lineage. Right.
Even in shamanism, it's said that we are always standing on the shoulders of our ancestors. So it's always everything they have learned and sacrificed and evolved in is what we are building ourselves on. So we should never, never forget them. I mean, I'm not just talking about Indian system. I'm just talking about, the shamanic practice.
Yeah, everywhere. The Pitris, yeah, absolutely. And also in China, they value this Pitri system mainly. They don't have God's system. Yeah, for some reason they don't have Devayana, but they have Pitriyana. Ancestors. They believe in ancestors. The whole Confucius system, this family system is everything for them. But unfortunately, they don't have that inner development of the soul, which also is here pushing the whole thing forward and evolves by that also, by that interaction with the world. It also evolves. It's an evolutionary soul, which is growing in the capacity, learns how to be in time and space. It is an immortal spark, but it doesn't know how to stay here effectively. So it learns through this interaction and increases its capacity to stay until it becomes immortal. And that is Devayana. So these two goes hand in hand. Yeah? Pitriyana would not take place if there would be no soul to reincarnate, and other way around. So this kind of duality or dialectics. Great. Okay, I will stop here for today and close with the mantra. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramayah Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dhanyavad.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.